podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. Before we get started with this week's show, first off, let me take this opportunity to welcome back the regular listeners. And if this is your first time listening to the show, I hope you enjoy this episode and decide to subscribe to the show. And on today's show, I've got Dave Tonge. He's the performance director of the swimming program at the University of Cardiff Met. So welcome onto the show, Dave.
Thank you very much.
It's still a mouthful for me to say Cardiff Met, because I'm used to. I'm of that generation of it being UWIC, and it's a little bit easier on the tongue. That is.
Yeah, UWIC's much easier, isn't it? Yeah, Cardiff Metropolitan University. There we are.
So before we delve into today's topic, Dave, can you talk to us a little bit about how you kind of got on your journey to where you are today?
Yeah, no problem. So as a youngster, I was a swimmer. I swam at Splot swimming pool in the Splot Squid Kids. That was the academy down there, and that was run by the council, the Cardiff Council. So sort of worked my way up the junior squads there, as it were, and then got spotted by Cardiff Swimming Club at the age of 9, and at the age of 9 went into sort of proper training then, as it were. So, you know, committing to a certain amount of morning training sessions, certain morning, afternoon, evening training sessions. Worked my way up in Cardiff Swimming Club. It's a national performance centre, and that was first of all with John Stout, who was the assistant head coach at Cardiff, and then I ended up in Dave Haller's squad, who was the sort of top coach there, the head coach, who retired in recent years. Swam sort of county standard and made some qualifying times for nationals. My main strokes were 200 free, 100 fly. I did a bit of 100 free as well. And at the age of 18, I ended up in a full-time job, and I just couldn't commit to this training anymore. It was very, very difficult to try and keep it going. So I actually quit Cardiff, which you know, it was a shame, but you know, it was time to sort of start full-time work after stopping school, etc. But along the way, sort of between the ages 16 and 18, I gained my lifeguard qualification, and I also got my assistant swimming teacher's qualification. And then 2 years later, I managed to get my teaching and coaching qualifications. My mum, whose name's Anton, she runs a club up in Cardiff Met, funny enough, which was obviously the old UWIC. She's been doing it for about 25 years now, and still going strong, and that's called Kincoid Conquerors. So I was doing a bit of teaching and a little bit of coaching for her and gaining some valuable experience there. And sort of after about 2 years of being out of the pool, I missed it, you know, as you do as a swimmer. You do miss going in, and you put the weight on a little bit, and, you know, you want to try and get back into some physical activity. So I joined the Masters Club, which was called Clams, or Cardiff Masters, if some people call it, but Clams was the sort of the slang name for it. And yeah, I got back in the water around the age of 20 and started sort of doing some really good times. You know, I developed a little bit more. I sort of got a little bit taller, a little bit broader, put a bit more weight on, as I said, but I managed to strip back, and after using the gym and etc., I developed more. And very lucky enough, in the 19 to 24 age group, I got myself a Welsh record, which I believe still stands today in 200 free. So quite chuffed with that. So going back to the coaching side of things, as I was in full-time work, I was a lifeguard at UWIC, or Cardiff Met now as it's called. I got the head coach's role for the junior swimming academy up here. So I did that for 5 years. So that was teaching sort of ages between 4 to 10 swimming, and then coaching the ages sort of 10 years and upwards up to the age of 16 before we were feeding them onto Cardiff Swimming Club. Did that for about 5 years, as I said, and then the performance director role came up, which was coaching the swim team. The swim team was very small at here at the time. You know, I wasn't getting paid very much for it. It was a volunteer's role, and they were paying my expenses because I was working full time as a lifeguard and duty manager as well. And yeah, so we were sort of around in the top 30 at British University Colleges Swimming, which is Bucks Swimming. And I've been doing it for the last 6 years now, and we're all the way up to the top 10, which is really good. So we've done really well as a squad. We've built really well, and we've gone from a team of 10 swimmers up to a team of sort of 40 plus swimmers, all different abilities, but I'd say around a strong 10 which were performance athletes. So it's been a very successful few years, and it's getting better and better as the years go by, which I'm glad to say.
And have you found that it's been a kind of upward struggle to a certain extent to compete against some of the bigger universities? Because with my sporting background, I've been fortunate to be to go on King Coed campus, and obviously the swimming pool isn't the biggest. So if you compare it to the likes of, just go down the M4 and go to Swansea, obviously that university's got access to a 50-metre swimming pool.
Yeah, I mean, after a couple of years of coaching them and realizing that I got some good swimmers coming through here, and the more good swimmers that were coming through, the better the program was becoming. And so, speaking to my bosses and looking at funding and stuff, we were lucky enough to they were able to provide a minibus which took us from campus down to the pool down the bay, the 50-metre pool down there. So we do that once a week just to try and get that long course training in and sort of show off to new swimmers and new students coming through that we have got the facility of a 50-metre pool, and we've got a good relationship with Cardiff Swimming Club who sort of not that they give up pool time for us, but the pool down there which allows us to give us an hour every Tuesday morning. So that's one good thing, and so we're able to compete, and get close to those top universities like Loughborough and Bath and a few others that are up there in the top 5, top 10. But I think by offering this program and us becoming a focus sport in the last year as well, it's certainly attracting the swimmers, and more want to come here. There's talk of a new swimming pool on campus as well, which is going to be even better for us. We're looking at 6, maybe 8 lane 25. I'm pushing for more, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, it has been a struggle, but it is getting better, in answer to your question.
But I can't see logistically where would you put this? Where would you put a new swimming pool on that campus?
We've obviously the current 25 4-lane is in the S block, which is sort of at the bottom end of King Coed campus, and next to the tennis centre, we've just had a new lovely, brilliant indoor basketball arena, which is called the Archers Arena, and that was phase 1 of the project. Phase 2 of the project is going to be the new swimming pool and gym and new squash courts and trampoline hall, which has been designed and plans are in place ready for it. We're just waiting for the nod ready to start phase 2 now, and that's actually where the outdoor tennis courts used to be. If you remember from being an athlete coming up here, you probably remember where the outdoor tennis courts were in the outdoor 5-a-side pitch. So that's where they're looking to build it. And
in terms of, we were talking like off air on Twitter and saying, how have you kind of seen the progression of kind of the student athlete component come along with your athletes?
So as in the balance as being a student and being a swimmer, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So, again, over the years, it was very much a social squad when I took it over. They were ranked, close. It was 29 or 30th overall in British university swimming. And as we've been getting better, it's something that we've been sort of really looking at. I mean, they've been doing a strength and conditioning, and they've been incorporating different things into the program. And academic studies is obviously a big thing. They're here to be students and learn and get their qualifications, etc. So for an example, on a Tuesday morning when we go down to the bay, I've got to make sure they're back in time to be at a 9 o'clock lecture. So there's a sort of one thing that we need to consider. But there are certain things I try my best to be as a mentor for my students, me being an ex-student as well as being a full-time member of staff here. I've been lucky enough to do some studies along the way, and tips that I've used over the years and that my coaches and tutors help me is just making sure that if they are missing lectures for training or competition or whatever it is, because there is that flexibility, they make sure they get their PowerPoint slides sent to them before or after the lecture so they can catch up with things. Make sure there's big communication with the tutors, because the tutors are my colleagues, and I want to make sure my athletes are communicating via email and verbally, and making sure that they've got that relationship with them so they know who they are and that there's that sort of leniency with them. I always make sure that they're setting goals, so making sure that their goal for the year is they've got to train and commit to a certain amount of sessions, but they've also got to make sure they attend their lectures, which they're pretty good at anyway. They're here because they want to be here. It's not a free ride. They've paid to be here. So, that's one big thing I make sure they do. This year, obviously, we've become a focus sport now, and so 15 of my top swimmers are going to be getting free massage and physio and strength conditioning with the strength conditioning team. And we've been in talks with different companies like PAS and Youth Sport Nutrition, who are going to be putting some diet plans together and nutrition support together for the team, and sort of incorporating the fact that they're students. We've got to expect that they'll go out and have social gatherings, but how to recover properly and what to eat, etc., the next day if they're going to do those things, which all students do. So these are new things that are coming in, and which are going to be, very helpful to getting that sort of student swimmer and the balance right as a competitive athlete as well.
It sounds like you're going down the right path. Would you say it sounds like also that, would you say they are better prepared than, say, some of the other sports teams within the uni from a time management kind of way of looking at it?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that swimmers are the best prepared. I mean, we're a very unique team because I coach men and women, and they're both, it's a very unique team for that fact, because most sports are sort of got split female male roles, and so they've got their own coaches, and so therefore it's a unique team, but I wouldn't say they're better prepared. They do gel very well because there's a big mix of boys and girls. But we're certainly, with the focus sports, especially in the university, there's some of the key sports that we've always been good at here. And they've always had these programs in place, and we're sort of probably the more up and coming team with that. I mean, behind the scenes, we've been doing it anyway, but it's a case of making it more official now. Now we're sort of competing with the top 10 universities in the country, or top 15 in certain competitions. It's something that we're definitely putting in place, and the proof's in the pudding now, and we've got our new website up and running, which sort of advertises all the different things that we offer and what we're doing with the swimmers and what the coaching team are offering.
Well, that's why you'd probably say from the university's perspective, it wants to kind of push its way up to the upper echelons of sport, which is, as most people, and especially in the UK, would know, UWIC would be one of those universities you'd associate with sporting excellence.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we're renowned for competing up there, and our goal is to get all our sports to become focus sports, but also to be in the top 10, and that is the goal. And we're not far off in most of our sports. There's lots of new up and coming sports coming through all the time. Rowing was a big one last year, which is I know that's your bag, and so you're probably quite interested to know this. But the rowing team are up and coming, and they've got a good team. They've won some awards last year, so watch this space with the rowers. But with the swimmers, watch this space as well. And if the new pool does happen in the next 2 years, we're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Well, and then in terms of kind of like the varsity between Swansea and Cardiff,
yeah,
you'd have thought they'd involve, well, say Cardiff Met now to some extent, because you would say in sporting terms, probably as a Welsh university, you would say that was the big brother of them all. Yeah,
certainly. I mean, we've actually, in the last 2 years, taken it off our own backs as myself and Dan Davis, who's my assistant coach. We were in talks with Swansea Uni, and we've done it at our we didn't call it varsity, we called it Jewel in the Pool, and we, in the last 2 years, hosted Jewel in the Pool here, and we're going to do it again this year. We invited Cardiff last year as well, so it was like a Cardiff-Swansea, Cardiff Met thing. Mm-hmm. It was only a friendly, but it was a sort of team championships type kind of setup, all the 50s, all the 100s and 200 freestyle, and then a cannon relay at the end. And it was just a bit of extra competition for the guys and the girls, and to make sure that they can get that competition in and just be a part of that, as you said, that varsity thing. But hopefully now that we're showing that we're up there in the top 10, that they'll try and include us, and it's something that I'm going to push for as well in the next year or two.
Well, it's a difficult one, really, because you've got like the traditional rivalries of, say, Loughborough, Bath. I think it's off of my head. Depending on sports, it'll vary between other ones. But obviously, in swimming, depending on where the national programs were based, obviously, Loughborough's always going to be that juggernaut because British swimming has run out of there. You hear of athletes still being based at Bath, Sterling and things like that. So from my perspective, obviously going to university as a swimmer, which probably most people, even my listeners, won't know that.
Yeah.
It's quite sad to see British swimming pulling out of, say, the likes of Swansea. I think Sterling a little bit, because you're thinking, well, isn't that just, and this is my personal opinion, being very anglicised, and obviously being based out of, say, for the able-bodied being Loughborough and the Paralympics being out of Manchester, you're thinking, well, okay, we are one country in the Olympics, but shouldn't there be some system in place where the Welsh and the Scots can at least have an equal footing to some extent? Obviously, the resources, say, come Commonwealth Games, is not going to be the case, but to have some equal footing in terms of national programs. So if their athletes are good enough, they get the coaching and they can, to some extent, stay at home.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, and I agree. It would be nice to have a sort of British swimming base at the sort of the performance centres, and it was a shame when they left Swansea, but of course Swim Wales are based there still, so there is that stepping stone and sort of base there. Hopefully, if and when this new pool it gets finished, and we're going to have a lot of sort of filming underwater cameras, and we're going to have labs which are built onto the pool, and I know this is included in the design, so you never know, British Swimming might take a little peek at that and might want to get themselves involved here. I mean, there's obviously the pool down the bay as well, where there's the 50-metre pool, and the facility there is a brilliant facility down the bay, so there's no reason why they couldn't have a base at these Welsh pools, and as you said, in Scotland, up in Stirling, etc., just to spread themselves across the country a bit more.
Well, you'd think it'd give it more scope from a performance perspective to have a bigger pool of athletes, because you're only going to have so much pool time for your athletes if it's based at one swimming pool.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But in terms of, obviously, with your other role outside of the swimming program, obviously you were saying you were also the manager of the facilities, and you were talking, obviously we've got a similar, how would I put it, a friend that's there with Anthony Hughes.
Yeah.
When you brought that up, it's like, it's a very, very small world.
Yeah, it is indeed. Yeah. So I'm one of there's 4 duty managers who work on shift here, and I'm one of the duty managers. And then there's Owen Rogers, who's the manager of the sports facilities, and he's also assistant director of sports. So that's my role, and that's my full-time job. And I'm very lucky to be able to have time off from that role to go and coach the swim team during student sport time. But so I've come across, going back to Anthony, over the years, because I've been working here 18 years now, believe it or not. So I've seen, and I actually do remember you coming back and forth once upon a time. When I've mentioned that I was having this interview with you this morning, I've spoken to a couple of different people, and they remember you being up in Nyack as well. So it is a very small world. And he's still here now, Anthony. He's back and forth most days.
I was up there, what week, 2000? I was up in Nyack. It would have been the start of the Paralympics last year for the or what they call it now, the in-sport series. So I was down there not too long ago as well. Right.
Yeah. No, it's a brilliant facility, and we've just had our new 400 metre outdoor track open now as well, which will certainly attract even more athletes to the campus. And the new 3G pitch, which is scrummageable, so it's for rugby training as well as matches in the centre of the outdoor track. So we've got a new shot put area and new throwing cage, and so it's going to attract lots and lots of different athletes from around the country, I hope, and hopefully with a new pool it's going to be even better. It'll certainly be the facility to come to in the next year or two.
I'd have thought so. I think with me it was the base, because obviously you've got to take, as a swimmer, you've got to kind of take the facility into perspective with your course, because obviously I know Cardiff Met is, and I did sports science, so it's one of the better ones in the country. But from the performance side of things, you've got to look at, well, what's the actual swimming program like? So it's kind of, it's a difficult one. I had set in my sights when I was a youngster, well, not a youngster, but getting ready to finish school, I wanted to go to Loughborough, and obviously I was told, well, adamantly, it'd be the wrong idea to do because, like I was saying earlier in the episode, it's obviously the juggernaut that it is. I'd be a small fish in a big pond, so it's like, okay. What other universities can I go to that have got those facilities? And I think I made the right choice to go to a Welsh university. I'm in the right place for it.
I think it's an interesting point because I'm quite lucky here because yes, we've got a four lane 25 and we are having a new pool, but because the Bay swimming pool's so close and Graham Wardell, who's head coach down the Bay, is I've got good friendship with him, and Dale is assistant coach. We've got a good link. So if I am having those sort of British swimmers who are coming in, like Ian Lloyd, who's literally just left me, he was swimming with me a little bit, but his main training was down at Cardiff because he wanted the 50-metre pool, and also he wanted his full-time head coach who he'd been training with sort of since, for a few years after David retired. We've got that link, so it's quite a bonus really because they're getting it. They're coming in, they're looking at how close Cardiff Swimming Club is. They can swim with Graham if they want to, or if they want to, they have to still compete for the uni if we're giving them scholarships, etc. But if they want to sort of not lax off from training, because that's not what I'm saying at all. We've got a 12-hour swimming program plus strength and conditioning, so it's ample for student swimmers. But they can do a bit of both, or they can swim with me if they live on campus. I mean, there's that flexibility, and there's a really sort of good choice for new swimmers coming through who certainly want to come to Met, but are undecided because they're not sure about the swimming here.
Oh, I'd never say training is lax at university because I've got quite good story. When I was in my first year, I said, because all the other guys I had was living, we weren't athletes, so I kind of said to them, if you come in late at night, as long as you don't make noise, so be whatever time it is in the morning, I won't make noise, and I'm leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning to go training. And there's that mutual respect. It never happened. So
well, we try our best now when they're applying, and that they're a high standard sports person. That we try and get them in the same halls, and if they're swimmers, they're close to the pool. Or it doesn't always work out because people drop out, etc. But usually we've got sort of sports people in the same block. There's sometimes a mix, but we do tend to try and do that because of the fact that people might not be as respectful as they used to be back in the day when maybe you were a student.
It's not
not saying you're old.
That long ago. It's only, how long are we going? It's not even a decade yet since that would be my first year.
Oh, there we are.
But in terms of, say, if you look at, say, the British programs, and if you said, in an ideal scenario, if you could have the kind of the American system model, would you kind of take that with open arms, or would you kind of pick and choose elements of it?
I think as you asked the question earlier about British women being based around the country, it's a really interesting one, and I'm sure with this recent success in the World Champs and us coming second in the medals table, I think we're going in the right direction. I don't think we need to copy the Americans as such, because it's all down to money and down to facilities, and we are up and coming. There's more and more facilities being built all over the country. So I think we are slightly behind the times with regard to American swimming, but we're getting there. And I think the next Olympic Games will show that we are actually up there with them, and we'll be competing with the best. So in answer to your question, I think let's keep doing what we're doing and put our own stamp on things.
Mm-hmm. No, but what I meant, Dave, is in terms of like the collegiate system.
Yes. Yeah. So sorry, can you repeat that? I missed that then.
In terms of, what I meant is in terms of like the two collegiate systems. So say the likes of, if you're good enough, you'll get basically your student fees are paid for. As long as you...
sorry, right, I'm with you now. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, and again, that's something that we do offer. If we spot that someone's coming through, like, the likes of Ian Lloyd, and they go on, we've got different types of scholarships which are under review at the moment. But if you are, a British swimmer and, you've made Olympic Games, or you're on potential for making Olympic Games, then sort of student fees can be waived, and things will be, bursaries are put in place. I think, again, all down to money. You know, if the money's there, then why not? Why can't we offer, you know, it's no skin off the university's nose if we can get these athletes to come in and, you know, study with us, get their qualifications with us over 3 years or 5 years, and get the best athletes in here to compete for the university at the same time and get the name out there.
Well, it's kind of like, we'll call it UIT because it's easier for me. It's not like you're kind of starting a new trend, because obviously I spoke to another coach at, basketball coach at Northumbria University, and we were talking, obviously, from my opinion, a university in the UK is not going to fund, what is it now? Somebody's education to £9,000 a year. But then if you look on it at the grounds, when people moan in the UK, it's this, if you because of where I grew up, being overseas and being around Americans, when they say, oh gosh, well, I think the minimum is going to be probably what a student in the UK is going to pay. They're going to pay in 1 year. So when people moaning about that, I'm thinking, yes, it's probably the most expensive in Europe, education-wise, but it's not the deal in the world. No,
I agree. I mean, I can't make the decisions with for waiving student fees, but I would be certainly on board if, they change their opinion on it, and, we decided that, we've spotted a talented athlete, and they deserve to have their, even half fees, covered, and, and just to sort of get them on board and sort of make them the best they can be.
Well, probably in the long term, it's probably it's a form of recruitment. Because if you can say, we can offer you this, the athlete can then sit down, okay, this university is giving me that. But then at the end of the day, you should still look at the academic side of it. What are you going to come out with at the end?
Yeah. And also, can you get them qualified? They're going to be intelligent people if they come into university, and, if they're getting a good sort of sports science degree, for instance, can we then keep them in the program? Can we use them as an Olympian or a Commonwealth athlete? Can we attract further, better swimmers and better athletes in different sports, with that profile that they've studied here and they've decided to stay here either as a lecturer or as a coach or as an ambassador for the university?
Well, I think it's got a good name for it. It's in terms of that's what's in excellence. You could probably, if you started naming athletes, it'd probably there's the next one, and then you think of somebody else who's through their time as either as an athlete or after or before has gone to that university. Yeah. But kind of going forward, what are kind of your goals and aspirations for your club?
Well, I mean, going back to the focus sport, and for focus sport is that they get these benefits. So they've got, I've had it agreed now that because we finished well in the table last year and gained some valuable Bucks points and made some good finals, and we've shown that we've got some British standard swimmers in the team. They've recognised this as a focus sport and put a little bit more funding into it. So we've got 15 athletes who are going to get all these benefits. So going forward from there, it's a sort of 3-year plan in my eyes. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're over the last 2 to 3 years, we're always making top 10 at British University Swimming. We're looking to make, more finals, which obviously is top 10, but you only score points in the top 4. So as a 3-year plan, maybe 4-year plan, hopefully, attract some more swimmers, keep the program going and work hard, keep the connection with Cardiff Swimming Club going with the 50-metre pool down there, and hopefully get some podium time, top 4, first, second and third, obviously podium, and that's when the valuable points come in, and that's when the profile of the swimming university goes up then, and maybe we'll be stealing swimmers from Bath and Loughborough in years to come. I hope that's the case.
Well, probably the easy one to pick off probably at the moment would be Bath, I'd have thought.
Yes, well, I mean, Birmingham have just got their new 50-metre pool, and so they're always sort of top 5, sort of top 7. Swansea are coming back, even though the British Swim have left them down there. They've still got a good programme in place, and sort of they're always close to us. You've got Stirling, Sheffield Hallam's a good university as well because they're 50-metre pool, and Sheffield. So there's a lot of them are sort of there and neck and neck with us or just above us. So I think once we start taking those sort of universities out, and we've got a big potential to do that, we're going to be sort of top 5 certainly in the next 3 years, I would say. And I hope that's the goal for me. We've just become affiliated with Swim Wales as well, I forgot to mention. So that's good for extra competition outside of Bucks. So the swimmers will have an opportunity to go down, to international meets down the bay and go to Swansea, get a bit of long course competition in preparation for getting them ready for the British colleges and swimming. So British colleges and university swimming. So there's the goals, and hopefully, if you speak to me in a couple of years' time, we'll be discussing that we're top 5 position and scoring bigger points than we have done in the past.
Well, kind of with me, until I actually went to university, I never even thought of Birmingham as a swimming university, because you think of, clubs of when I was up and coming, because I was looking at going between, if I can remember off the top of my head, I applied to Bath, Swansea, Coventry, Manchester Met, and what was the 5th university? It might have been Newark, but I don't think it was.
Right.
And kind of things like that. And then once you went to Bucks, Birmingham was quite a good university, and what setup they had in terms of like scholarship wise, you're thinking, but then a lot of times you don't know these things, because at times it's networking with coaches and things like that. Obviously, I went to Swansea because that's where British Swimming was based.
Yeah.
And it was probably, in hindsight, it's probably the best decision I made to go to South Wales, because I ended up being in the right place for the continuation of my career. Obviously, unfortunately for me, within, what would it have been? About 4 or 5 months, I was dropped from the program. So it's what would have happened if I'd have been outside of Wales. So if we say, even if I was at UWIC, I'll probably have been centrally based. But if I was in England, it's like, well, what do I do now? Obviously, I talk about that story in after dinner speeches and whatnot, and saying I'd planned to obviously come back in the new year and roll back into to student life and be a student for the next 3 to 4 years, and obviously get my degree. Sport was kind of on hiatus from that regard, and obviously, as we were talking about with Anthony, he rang me up, have you thought about trying this sport? And it's kind of springboarded from there. So it's I think it's from a internal perspective, I think we look after our athletes in Wales, because it's like, well, don't want to be lost from kind of the sporting heights and excellence to some degree, because you never know what you're going to be able to excel in. If it's brutally honest, I probably could have done a lot better in swimming than I did if I'd applied myself as I did further down the career. It's like you were saying, how do people... I actually was one of those ones that I didn't actually enjoy training. It's people say, do you still swim now?
Yeah.
I should, from a recovery standpoint, but I think it's because I spent, not that long in the grand scheme of things with swimmers are regarded, because I started at the age of 11, which is very late in that regard, until I was, how old would I have been? About 19. So it does mount up the hours, and obviously when people say, is a swimming pool different where you go? Not really. The tee is on the floor and the tee is on the ceiling. It don't matter if that's a 25-metre pool or a 50-metre pool.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think from a mental perspective, I think that's probably how I see it personally, is probably the tougher aspect of training, because that is always going to be the same. The environment, so to speak, is the same, because the pool, the actual inside of a pool is not going to change that much. Whereas with the other sports, if you say the likes of we'll use rowing and athletics as the example. Obviously, rowing is predominantly outside, bearing the weather, and athletics obviously has an indoor and outdoor season, so they're going to have that seasonal approach. So I think that one. How do you kind of, how do I word this now? Help your athletes from time to time if they're feeling the strain and the kind of the drag of training, so to speak?
It's a good question, actually, because I mean the battle I have with students, a lot of them sort of they're 18, 19, and their parents have been sort of helping with their training, and they cook for them, etc., etc. And so the transition from coming from home, living with parents, to living on campus or living in a student accommodation and having to balance going to lectures and to training and to cook their own food. The first sort of few months, it's hard to sort of keep them busy. They've either got that mindset where they want to be in the pool and nothing changes, or I've got the other sort of half the team who who actually I've had enough of swimming all my life now. It's the same old thing, and I'm going to sort of die off and not want to do it anymore. That's the wrong word to use, but drop off. And then after the first year, they then miss it because they put a bit of weight on. They want to come back in. So, I try my best to sort of put them in, in my shoes and tell them that I've also been there, and it's fine for them to sort of cut because their training's usually cut by half compared to what they're used to doing in their old clubs. 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening or afternoon. They come into a student, I usually say to them, just commit to 2 mornings and 3 evenings. You got your strength and conditioning on top. You got your gym membership as well if you want to, do extra stuff on your cardiovascular or free weights and whatever else. And so they soon find that it's actually quite an attractive balance. They keep in fit. They're able to tick over because their baseline endurance fitness is there from all those years of training. And now they're coming in and they're doing short and sharp hour to an hour and a half sessions. And it usually, I'd say 80% of the time, it attracts them and keeps them in the squad. And as I said to you earlier, it's a very unique squad. It's a social element to it as well. They don't just go out on the beers all the time. They do go out and they have team breakfast after morning training. So they go over to our Centro bar, which is the SU. They have food together, and they sort of support each other. So it is a very unique team like that. So I'm very lucky with that. However, the new lot are coming in now in September. They might be a totally different bunch, and I might have to find a new approach to it all. We'll see.
Well, that's always the way, isn't it? You can't. It's got to kind of tweak and adapt. And obviously, as a coach, you know that. But in terms of like the coaching, and we come to like the swimming side elements. Obviously, from when I've stopped, which is now probably about 10 years ago, how has swimming progressed? And obviously, you talk about an hour to an hour and a half training sessions. Obviously, I was watching the World Champs, and obviously they're saying now sprinters are doing at most 800 meters. So kind of how has that side of things changed in the last decade?
It's a tough one for me because I've got a mixed bag of swimmers and no doubt in the next year or two when the pool's finished, we'll have to relook at whether we have a performance squad separate training to the sort of more social / people who want to still swim, etc. So I have to find the right balance. I've got my sort of advanced lane in the pool, and then it's sort of I've got different abilities in different lanes. But I do tailor the session. I usually got a couple of different sessions in mind for each session. Some of my guys are sprinters, so they don't need to stay in as long. So they only do one morning and 2 or 3 afternoons, and it's more gym work which they're doing. So strength work and strength and conditioning. And I just get them focusing on that. And then, the endurance swimmers are invited to come, make sure they come to morning training for long course. So it's getting the right balance, sussing your swimmers out. They're only with me for 3 years. Some of them only do a year with me and decide it's not for them anymore. Some of them decide that the training doesn't suit them because, as I said, it's hour to an hour and a half rather than 2 hours or 4 hours a day. We're only doing an hour to an hour and a half. So I'm looking at sort of high intensity interval type training, which is sort of sessions that I would enjoy as well. So I try and think, put them in my shoes and think, right, well, what would I enjoy here? What would sort of suit me? I'm tired after a day of lectures. I've possibly been out on the beers the day before as well, which only happens once a week, by the way. I don't allow it every day. And I put my trust in them to do that, and sort of tailor it to how they're feeling, etc. And I have to change it last minute if needed. You're talking about British Swimming and their program, and they're full-time swimmers at the end of the day. These are students who are sort of trying to balance everything. New life, new experience in their life, I should say. Living on their own, trying to go to lectures and adapting to a new coach who they might get on with, they might not get on with. But so I think that sort of sums it up really as how I go about it. I sort of suss them out first and try and put the program together as the month goes on when they first come to university.
But I think we both can attest to, we've all been there and been in their shoes from being that first few weeks at uni. I was probably fortunate enough. I was in Swansea probably a few months before I went to uni because I was trying to make the Commonwealth team for Melbourne. So I was over there in the summer in preparations for that and kind of learned to be away from home, family and whatnot before. Okay, it was probably from a mental side of things. It was very, very tough because, I've been away from home, but be it sports teams, school trips. You're around familiar faces where I think you're chucked in the deep end to a certain extent. So you talk about that element of they've got to learn to cook for themselves. I'm not saying I wasn't showing at home how to cook, but to people that are listening, it's probably not as bad as that. It was probably me at that age, be it teenagers. I'm watching, but it's like, well, it's still going to get done anyway, so why do I need to do it? But to kind of cut a long story short, I think that time in that summer period, people say to me, well, how did you learn to cook? Well, it's as simple there. It's I either learned or I starved. So I think that one is probably an extreme, but it kind of you've got to find a resolve, and that was what it was. So it's going to be, my cooking is very different to probably my family's, but it's probably that kind of student lifestyle that's about. I've mixed things together. I think I've horrified other flatmates and things. Well, not horrified, probably that's a bit too strong a word, but they're kind of perplexed as to why are you eating that, or why are you eating the similar meals every day? I kind of summarized it in a little, and probably the athletes would agree with this completely. It's at that kind of stage of my life, you don't really see it as food, you see it as fuel. I don't care what it looks like after be it, I don't know, in the pool, in the gym, or wherever train I was coming from. It's just you putting the fuel on board and then going about whatever I have to do the rest of that day, or say at night, be it if I can relax and wind down, or do I have to actually do some revision, look at course notes or whatever it might have been, and kind of go from there. I think more so now that I've retired, 4 years ago, I've probably got a more eclectic look on food. I want it to at least look a little bit appetizing, but at that time of my life, it was very much it's just a necessity to probably like either fuel or refuel, and that's what really food should be. It's just keeping your body ticking over, and that's, I think, if we kind of sidetrack a little bit here, and obviously with the fad diets coming about, it's probably they've kind of taken that word over diet from what it was actually intended to be, which is your day-to-day eating habits.
Yeah, Yeah, no, I agree, and it's an interesting one really, and it's something that we're going to look at. Well, we've looked at and we're incorporating now. That's one of the reasons why I've been in talks and arranging some nutritional talks with the swimmers, with PAS and youth sport nutrition, because we're looking to put together some simple sort of meal plans and not meal plans, sorry, but sort of ideas for first years who are coming through. You know, the second years and third years, you'll get a bit of experience in their first year, first living on their own and working with their friends to sort of help each other put their diets together, essentially. But we're going to make sure that the performance athletes and the athletes who aren't on the performance squad get just get a little bit of a meal ideas. We'll put the costs of what things cost for them and just simple recipes so they can quickly chuck it together after training, or even if it's not training. Make sure they understand the food groups and what goes with what and whatever else, because believe it or not, a lot of them have had it all done for them, and it's quite an interesting one. It's just very simple, but just incorporating that and to suit it with the training is going to work really well over the next year, I'm sure.
Well, from the nutrition component, Dave, you say that's probably a very, very complex one, because obviously from my industry now, everybody is about, well, you could say probably the majority of people is weight loss. So you kind of, from the sporting context, it's kind of two sides of the coin. Obviously, with most people, you want to probably limit their carbohydrate intake. Whereas with those doing endurance sports, you want to kind of tweak it a little bit. Okay, they're not going to be wanting to lose weight in most cases.
No,
far from it. It's not piling on the weight, because you would intend that putting fat on them. But they want to increase their muscle size and be more explosive and whatnot. So obviously, for them, the carbohydrate component is very much important, because you don't want to be lagging off, be it from a training perspective, or be that in the lectures as well.
Yes, no, I agree. Yes, it is very new. Again, with swimming, especially the guys who are in the long distance. Well, not just long distance, but as you said, if they're banging up the miles in the pool, then the calories got to follow suit. Where there's a lot of them who get out, they go straight to lectures and they don't eat, and then I'm giving them a telling off later because they're feeling lightheaded and they can't perform if there's a test set that evening, for instance. So it's a big one. They need to be educated. They need to know how much they need to be eating after a certain session, when they need to be eating, so before and after a session, and what to be doing if they are going out and taking alcohol on board once a week.
Well, I can raise my hand up to that one about going to lectures straight away from training. Obviously, mine would have been at that time doing my HND, so I had to obviously do 6 till 8 training and then go straight up to the college. So that one I think it was very much a learning curve for me as to, well, I've got to do something, got to try and tweak it. Okay, it probably came a few years down the line once I moved on to the full degree program, and I was on campus, so it was very much easier to tailor my day in terms of be it training, lectures, and things like that. Whereas when swimming, it was this is when you're training, and it was, you could say, unfortunately, I had to. Or what would it be? I think it's about 2 to 3 hour lectures after it. So unfortunately for me, I don't think it was that often. I think there's only one occasion that springs to mind that I was asleep, and people say, "Oh, James, you're asleep." It's like it's not your lecturers boring, or you kind of feel bad for the lecturers thinking, "You're not boring me. I've been up 5 hours straight and I've not eaten since 5 a.m. So it's probably my body is switching off because it's tired."
Yeah. And that's certainly something we've got to make sure they're educated about, because if you don't want it to affect their relationship with the tutor, because if the tutor thinks they're lazy and they're falling asleep and it's only down to their training, and they're not educated enough to know to get the food in before they go to a lecture, then we need to sort of work as a team and make sure they know so that doesn't happen. But it's a very good point.
Well, it's a difficult one, though, because if you're having to, in all essence, kind of legging it from one area, from the sports side, to obviously having to be in at 9 o'clock lecture, it's quite difficult in terms of logistics and whatnot to be able to get, well, we'll say not just eating, we'll say a nutritional balance.
Yeah. No, I mean, and this is it, important to educate them to get to know what to eat. I mean, most, a lot of them do have 9 o'clock lectures, especially after long course training on a Tuesday. We're whizzing from the bay, so they're in the minibus for sort of 15, 20 minutes. So there is the opportunity to get a protein shake and carbohydrate shake down them, and then whatever else they need, banana, etc. But it's not enough. They do need a proper meal, a proper breakfast to be able to function through the day and then be able to train again later on. So it is a tough one. It's an ongoing one, and I'm sure all swimmers and athletes, around the world are always going to have the battle with it if they're students. But there's some, hopefully we'll try and, the plan that we've got now for next year, hopefully that will help these guys, and girls to sort of help them through their training plan and make sure they're not falling asleep like you were in lectures.
Well, I think it's maybe like you were saying, if the lecturer isn't to know that athlete is an athlete as well, they're going to they're going to assume they're lazy. Whereas if you got the likes of one of my lectures, once I went on to the degree, I can't speak. I went on to the degree program, was at one time our S&C coach, so he would know firsthand everything that goes alongside. Obviously, I know athletes, when the British swimming was down there, they had to, because they were swimming in the afternoon, they had to pick between going to training or going to a lecture. You're thinking, well, that's not great. And
no,
that one you probably have to take with a pinch of salt, and it's very much the individual's choice. It's like, well, obviously, whether or not that would happen in an American institution, I would highly doubt it. They probably tailor training around it or tweak it.
Yeah.
But then the collegiate program, that is their facility. So that's probably on the flip side. You look at it, they're not having to incorporate other things that are going on at the university. That's their solely facility for them. So be it if some of the athletes aren't, like their classes are spread out, they'll probably tailor that to the individual, whereas probably at a British institution, I'd have thought you probably couldn't do that.
No, I mean, maybe in years to come, it's something that they could look at, but it's a hard one. I mean, we're a sport campus, and it's going to be sport and health science now from September, because we've merged with the health science school. So maybe, in further down the line, certainly with the focus sports, they'll be able to speak to performance directors and the director of sport, and then of course the dean of the school, and try and structure things around lectures so those athletes can. But of course, if performance athletes are on degree courses where students are not even athletes, you can't really sort of tailor it just because of that. It's a very difficult one to do, isn't it? And I mean, the mind boggles, really. I mean, maybe if in years to come, I'd say it could be an option, but certainly not at the moment. I think we just have to keep doing what we're doing and try our best as coaches to make sure the athletes are prepared for lectures, and realise that they're students and they're here to do their academic studies as well as train for us.
But it's probably a difficult one, Dave, because you see in the likes of say the colleges, how you pronounce it? Myers Koff College introducing things like where they're virtually full-time athletes at college level. You're thinking, well, if the college are doing that, but then the universities can't, would the athletes who are coming from those type of colleges think they're taking a backward step to a certain extent, because they're being treated almost like a full-time, or taking sport as though that it's their career, and then if they do plan to then go on to further education, they kind of see it as a backward step. What would the problems with that, because obviously if you've in all essence from a academic standpoint, it's at a lower footing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we're still up and coming. You know, the top universities in the country, I think, do have this sort of American style thing in place where that, you know, it's if they're a performance, you know, if they're a British swimmer, for instance, then their swimming comes first, and the flexibility is there with their studies, and there is that flexibility at Cardiff Met, and us being sort of closer to the top 10 rather than the top 5. I think, you know, there is that flexibility if they are at a higher standard, but if they are only or not only, but if they're a performance athlete who aren't quite making British qualifying times, for instance, then they're in the university's eyes, the studies come first, and the lecturers, it all depends on the lecturer as well. It depends on, you know, whether they are flexible with it or whether they're strict with it. And, you know, and depending on the type of seminar or practical lecture or whatever it is that they go into, I think it all depends on, you know, what they're actually going to be missing and whether they're going to allow them to miss that for training purposes.
I think from personal experience, I think you could probably say the lecturer is probably one that you could probably have more flexibility with, whereas with a lab, that one you're going to struggle, because that's when it's very much team oriented to a certain extent, like group wise in terms of doing
yeah.
You can't. I wouldn't say you can't, but I would say financially, I don't know why the department would say, "Oh, you can do it another time by yourself," but that doesn't make sense.
No, it wouldn't work with it. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's value. Yeah, there's certain things that they're essential to go to, and, you know, if they miss them, then that's going to be, you know, it's going to reflect on their final grade or final, you know, end of year grade. So, you know, it's something that needs to be looked at. But I mean, as far as, you know, I got to follow suit and do as I'm told at the moment, and see how it goes, you know, and we'll see further down the line whether things will change.
Well, I think from my personal experience, I think I've had leeway in the run up to the Beijing Games in terms of, but that was very much what's the word I want? A partnership between, say, the likes of Anthony, be the Welsh rowing and the university, to kind of come up with a plan. Not forgetting Sport Wales, to come up with a plan that would allow me to up sticks in kind of simple terms to move where rowing is based in Reading, and kind of not obviously let my studies go by the wayside, because I was kind of given this ultimatum as, "Oh, we need you to move up to Reading," and kind of not fussed about the education, as to, you need to move from where you are now to be centralized, and you need to do it as well, not as soon as possible, but as in the next few days. You're thinking, okay, that's kind of that's to get that sorted is a minefield, but it got done. The university, to kind of cut a long story short, the university just said to me, obviously I had to do the lectures via PowerPoint and whatnot, come back for a group presentation and for my exam. So from that regard, I'm very grateful for the university to allow me that much flexibility.
Yeah, and we're very flexible at Cardiff Met. You know, it's you know, as I said, if they're that top end athlete, then that flexibility is certainly there, because we want to be able to say that they're our athletes, and we've given that flexibility. I mean, going back to Ian Lloyd, you know, he just, you know, went to Rio. He actually had a year out, which we gave him a year out, and, you know, to just concentrate on his training and go to the Olympics. And then after the Olympic Games, he came back and finished his third year on his scram course. So, you know, that sort of everything was put on hold for him to do that, and it worked out for him. You know, he did very well and came back and finished his degree off and graduated this year. So there's certainly that flexibility there. But you know, there's only a certain, you know, we can only give a certain amount of flexibility if they're, you know, only up and coming athletes, you know, and that's I think that's something we got to remember.
Well, you might how I speak, people might interpret. I say sport comes first. I kind of take that with a pinch of salt to some extent. Yes, I'm not saying that I didn't throughout my career to get to where the upper echelons of what I've achieved, but I kind of, when I got to university, I am also that. Well, I think when I've touched upon the university gave me that flexibility. I wanted to then prove with the next 2 years. Okay, you've given me that leniency and flexibility to go off and go to the Olympics. I'm going to give back in turn and prove to a certain extent that I can do it from the academic standpoint as well. Because I probably, in my mind, I got in back into university through the back door because of sports. It's okay. I wasn't a bad student, but I was probably an above average student. I'm quite content with being, well, people might say above average is probably 50%. I'm talking about 70, 80%, whereas I probably could push on probably a bit more, but I was more inclined from the sporting kind of thing. I wanted to excel in that, and it's more pleasure doing that than reading textbooks and things like that.
Yeah. I know there's obviously, that element to it as well. We have, different athletes who come here because of the standard of sport here, and yes, they have to have qualifications to get into university, but there's a few people who have probably been in your situation who've come in, not through the back door, but got in because they want to do sport, and then the degree is the extra added bonus which they come away with at the end. So I think that's great that you can offer both as a university.
Well, I think swimming's probably taught me a lot, and I bring it up probably a lot on this podcast. It's been a while since I brought it up, but like that triangle diagram of, obviously you've got your sport. You can't just say, I wouldn't just say swimming. You could say, just call it sport. Your education and your social life. And what they taught me, we'll say 15, 16-year-old, was obviously the paramount. At 15, 16, I was obviously in school overseas, so I'm required by law till I'm 18. So it's like, well, that's got to stay. I want to excel in sport, so what's got to give? Obviously, the social life. I think the only side of the social life that kind of came apparent was when I went to university, and obviously the social side of it, be it like the Wednesday nights and things like that. Okay, I didn't go out every week, as you say, attested like some of the athletes. I probably did the first social of the year, and maybe one or two throughout the year. But then it's quite difficult to go out on a Wednesday night or whatever and have to be up for training at 5 the next morning. So I'm very much not a morning person as it is.
Well, that's again down to the way I structure the training. I mean, they don't have Thursday morning training sessions, but for the fact that they tend to go out, not all of them go out. 50% of the team go out. Some of them go out like you, as an athlete now and again. But there's no Thursday morning session because we tend to do a good set on a Wednesday morning, which is usually 2 hours. We've got the pool booked for 4 hours if we want it. I never do 4-hour training, by the way, but we usually do 2 hours. The reason I got 4 hours is if I ever want to run a little friendly gala in there, or a bit of a friendly competition. But then on the Thursday evening, it's not punishment, but they see it as punishment because they tend to do a bit of a hard set. We usually do a sort of anaerobic set, or a test set, some sort of test set on a Thursday, just so they know that they can't go too mad on the Wednesday night, and they as long as they in their program they eat well and recover well throughout the day, and then it's an evening session rather than a late afternoon session on a Thursday, and they've got that in the back of their minds all the time that it can't be an all night session because they've got to train. So I think that works really well. You do have the odd ones who miss, and then they they've got to come and say why they've missed, but most of them respect it, and most of them sort of keep it going throughout the year.
But you say anaerobic threshold is not a punishment. I disagree. I won't probably, for the ones that don't know much about swimming, I won't go as far as it's punishment. I wouldn't say I didn't not enjoy it, but then mine was on, I think the top of my head, I think ours was on a Monday night, so it's at the beginning of the week, so you know it's coming. So, and you've had
it's coming, yeah.
You've had Sunday off.
Yeah.
So I won't say it's all bad, but it wasn't. I won't say it wasn't not my favourite, but it is what it is. It's there's. I think when I get asked, "Oh, what components of training did you miss throughout your career?" It's like probably most of them I don't miss, but that's because you're to a certain extent wrecking your body so much. It's to some extent it's not designed to be pushed to those limits. Well, it's not pushed to the limits that much all the time, but it's only gonna can only give so much. But from the aerobic standpoint, you probably at your fittest, because people say to me, I was told in no certain terms when I was at NIAC, when it was Rio's on, you should really be in Brazil. It's like, I look aesthetically fit, but that does go in hand with my job as a personal trainer. I have to look aesthetically fit, but I kind of took it with a little bit of salt, a little bit, and said, well, wouldn't it depend on what event I was doing? Be it if it was an aerobic sport, there's no chance I would be able, because I'm nowhere near as fit as, be it, oh gosh, how long will that be? That's probably about at the beginning of my career until when rowing stopped. But to those limits of cardiovascular fitness, it's like I haven't been in a swimming pool for, I'm going to say 5 years. And I have a love-hate relationship with the rowing machine. So I think I've kind of got over that from a mental perspective, because it's that frustration, as I think all athletes would have, of you're comparing to what you used to be able to do and things like that. So you're never in the right mind frame to do it, because you're thinking, this used to be easy, or I used to be going a lot faster than this. So it's very frustrating.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's only so long you can carry on for up to a certain age of smashing your body in the pool and, committing yourself to the pool. And I'm not saying that any other sport's easier, but, swimming is a big commitment, and there's got to come a time where you sort of look back and think, right, okay, that's enough. Enough's enough. That is, it's hard work. And, maybe as you've done, go to keeping fit, but giving your experience to others and become a personal trainer or a coach or whatever you want to be with your qualifications.
But I think when you say you can't compare the two, I'd say swimming is probably a better one in terms of, be it less grueling to a certain extent on your body because of the non-load bearing factor that it brings. So it's probably not as bad as, well, if you say the S&C component of training, that's probably more grueling on the body than what swimming would be.
Yeah, no, I agree, because obviously you've got to incorporate the recovery after doing S&C, and some swimmers aren't used to it. If they've come in to the new program now for a focus sport and they're not used to doing 2 S&C sessions a week and trying to get their bodies used to, they might be sore and achy and everything else. So there's a big, there's finding that balance to make sure that they get used to it. So it is hard. I was maybe talking about the age thing from what you've been doing it for a long time.
The age one is a definite big one, because your body starts breaking down. Obviously, if you do get injuries, they take longer to heal, which is very frustrating. It's thinking, back in the day, I'd be right as rain in a couple of days.
Yeah. Yes, agreed.
The last question before we wrap up the episode, Dave. So
okay.
If you had to summarize this episode into one sentence for somebody to take away, what would that be?
What, as a swimmer? or as, or what are we saying as a student swimmer? For looking at commitment, or how do you want me to say it?
Come from multiple angles if you want to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're a swimmer or a sports person, I think it's work hard. Get your qualifications to get to university. There's lots of opportunities in universities, Cardiff Met especially, up and coming universities like us in sport and other areas. But get yourself into a good sport and commit to the program. And if you get to university, you'll come away with a degree, and you hopefully make the Commonwealth Games or the Olympic Games and make your mark in the sporting industry. And that's all I would like to say, really.
Well, I think it's a good one to further. I think university gets a bad knock to a certain extent because of that pushing years ago. Obviously, everybody should go to university. It's like, well,
yeah.
You should take that with a pinch of salt. Not everybody is cut out to go to university. Not everybody should go to university. Obviously, I kind of probably never intend. Well, I don't say never intended to. I probably looked at it from. I don't know why, but I never thought I would be good enough to go to university because my grades were probably there or thereabouts. It's probably that apprehension, the thinking, well, I may not get in, or that rejection to that kind of synopsis of looking at things. But it's probably sets you up for life to a certain extent, be it with your peers, be it on your degree modules or the teammates that you get to meet along, because it's very much probably networking to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I've had quite a unique sort of journey through my career because even though I was a swimmer and I was a lifeguard and I sort of made my way into university that way, I was lucky enough to I didn't get the grades I wanted at school, but as a mature student and a full-time member of staff, they actually paid for me to do my degrees, and I've been sort of gaining my qualifications. And Cardiff Met have been paying for that along the way, which has been really unique and really good for me. And I've sort of developed as a student and as a manager and as a coach and etc. and as an athlete, over the years. And sort of the rest is history, so to speak. I'm still doing degrees now. I'm doing a PGC in higher education, and I'm lucky enough to sort of deliver some practical lectures for swimming and on the sports coaching module. So it's not for everyone, university, and I was lucky to get involved at a young age here and be able to gain those qualifications. But it's certainly a lot to offer from different angles if you're lucky enough to get the opportunity to do it.
I think that one, Dave, when you bring it up, would you say it's more on line with, say, an apprenticeship to a certain extent? It's not in all the essence of the word, but with the university.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I had the opportunity to be a bit more mature, and make decisions at a later date. I was in my 20s until I decided that, okay, there's people who are mature students coming in. Like, we have people in their 40s and 50s now doing undergrad courses. So, I did it. I noticed it years ago, and I took the opportunities while they were there. And so, yeah, it was a type of apprenticeship, if you'd like to say it like that. And nothing wrong with apprenticeships; they're brilliant. You get a trade, etc. And sort of my trade was to become a manager and a coach and now a tutor in sport. So so there's those opportunities around, I'm sure in other universities as well.
But I think when you touch upon it, like the mature element of a student, I think, well, I won't generalize here, but it's probably some fact within it. I think an athlete comes into a university a little bit more prepared than a normal student, because obviously that's probably more so with the athletes that have to get up at stupid o'clock in the morning as well. They're very much, they've been set in that, well, maybe not them personally, but the family's been set in a system that's very efficient. So I think they're very much ready for time management components of things, be it they can balance things a little bit better than other students.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. Yeah, certainly. It's if you've been at high standard, especially you're a swimmer 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. You're used to going training and then going to school. and then getting on the bus or getting a lift or whatever back to training, and then you're coming home, you're having your tea, you're going to bed, and so that routine's always there. And I'm sure it's the same in other sports. But if you haven't been a sports athlete and been involved with that sort of program, you come into university without any experience there, and so there's certainly that divide, with the different students that come through the system.
Well, I think we probably can't generalize this. There's probably some students that probably have that crossover.
No, agreed. Yeah. And it's all, of course, there's not all of them. They're not all the same, but some learn quicker than others, and some some have already got it there because they've been taught it from a younger age, so I certainly can't generalize, but I enjoy working with the variety that's there as well, I have to say.
I was probably trying to think off the top of my head, probably at one, not extreme, but one echelon down when I started university, and by the time I left, it was probably very much. But then I was very much an elite athlete, and when people ask, "Oh, how do you manage the two?" They've both got schedules, and you kind of have to build out your personalized one for yourself. So this is when I've got lectures. I think rowing was a little bit easier than swimming was, because obviously, like we said, we touched upon it. The swimming schedule can't really change. It's this time in the morning, this time at night, and kind of go from there. Whereas with rowing, because I wasn't centrally based, I had my training programs, and I'd fit it in according to what my student day was like. So it's kind of the essence of using the actual term. I was a student first, and in that regard, and then when term time was out, I was very much an athlete. And I think when people say it's quite a hard balance, I look at it, especially when I wasn't at Swansea, it kind of gave me that mental break from the sport. I wasn't solely not indulge is probably not the right word, but fully immersed in the sport 24/7. It gave me that little bit of a respite. I could focus on something else and kind of take a break from sport, because people say, "Oh, it's all well and good being totally immersed in your sport," but that sometimes can be a bit too overwhelming, and you get probably the likes of burnout, and probably maybe at times a little bit obsessed with it.
Yeah, no, agree. It's certainly finding the balance. All these high performance sports where there is a big commitment, in and out of the pool, for instance, and in the gym and etc. It is all about finding that balance and respecting the age ranges you've got and gender, etc., and making sure that everyone's treated equally, and and just making sure that, as I said, the balance is there. Otherwise, the program's not going to work.
But in terms of like the athletes that you have, what kind of degree courses do they range upon? Are they more predominantly sports oriented or not?
I'm glad you asked that question, because it's something that, again, being a unique team, as I mentioned earlier, we've got I'd say 70% sports students in the team, but we've got management students that are based at Llandaff campus, and also School of Education and School of Health Science students who are based at Llandaff, and who will now be based up in Kincoed when we merge our schools. But so it is great to sort of see that, and there's lots of other teams that have got a mixed bag, but swimming has got I think swimming's probably the one of the sports that in Cardiff Met that have actually got a real wide range of different types of students from different schools, and I think that's great, and I think it shows that we're getting our advert out there, and making sure that it's not just the sports students who live on campus have the opportunity.
Well, it gives what word do I use? Multitude of experiences and whatnot, and obviously what they have to then implement into a degree. But when you say sport management, sorry, is it more on the lines of sports management, or is it more towards?
No, so the sports management would be classed as a sports student that's based on Kincoy campus, but they're the management, so business management, which is based at Llandaff, and different other types of management sort of courses, they're based at Llandaff, and different types of education courses. So there's 4 different schools, and we're looking to have a 5th school in the coming years, which is going to be interesting. So there'll be even more scope for more students, and it's a wide spread across the board of different athletes, different swimmers, and it just goes to show it's not just the sports people who come to Cardiff Met.
Well, I think that would be the what's the word I want? I can't think of the word I want. But that would be when you think of Cardiff Met, you would assume that would be the case.
I think
that's probably generalisation a little bit, but.
Yeah, no, people are, we are renowned for being really good at certain sports, and so everyone does think sport, but, there's been a survey done recently, and like they did, I think it was across Britain, and a lot of students are looking at technology now, artificial intelligence and that sort of thing, and so we're looking to have in the next few years a school of technologies, which will be based in the city centre. So they're looking to buy some land there and build a new school, and hopefully that's going to attract even more students, and that will create sort of international students coming from across seas and across the different countries, to do these courses. And we have got a big sort of percentage of international students already. I mean, one of my girls in the team, Sophia, she's from Cyprus, and she's she's in the performance squad. So it just goes to show the names out there around the world, and we've got some good connections. But with this new school of technologies coming in, we'll hopefully attract even more now in the next coming years.
Well, it's probably, I think probably with the branding of the university probably helps, because that logo is synonymous of the university, even though it's had a name change.
Yes, yeah, the Arch is always there, and so all the sports teams are called Archers as well. So sometimes people get confused that we're an archery university. We've had a few phone calls recently, actually, because we've called the new basketball and netball arena the Archers Arena. People have been confused that it's an archery facility, but it's actually not. So, but no, you're right. The Cardiff Met name, it changed from UIC to Cardiff Met, but the Archer still stands, and so everyone knows the logo, and the name is obviously out there.
Well, I think it's probably it's a good one. It's very much, I think probably this day and age, we talk about brands and whatnot, but I think that one, university, I'd probably stick to its roots to a certain extent, because if I kind of use Swansea as the other example, gosh, the amount of times that it's had a rebrand, is thinking, how much is that costing? But that's probably a different topic. But it's I think it's had another one since I've left as well. We're thinking, could you not get it that the logo is? I would know it's my university, because I obviously went there. So, but then if we say bring up your example, it's synonymous, probably because of the pedigree of the sport. So I won't say it's in your face, but it's been there or thereabouts. It be it in the BBC or whatnot, with athletes being at the facility. So it's always. It's there or thereabouts. Probably Swansea a little bit less so in the recent times, but that's probably because the very, very elite aren't in the campuses, not campuses, but using those facilities as much.
Yeah, no, I mean, Brandon's interesting. I haven't really thought about it, to be honest, until you've brought it up now. The Archer's out there, and I think we'll always keep the Archer because people know us for that. I don't really take much notice of the university logos, to tell you the truth. I know the names, and I know who my competition is in swimming. But as you said, it's probably a different topic. With regards to branding, etc.
So, Dave, once again, thanks for coming on the Mindset Game podcast.
Great, no worries. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed speaking to you.
Likewise. And before I forget, I would really appreciate it if you would be so kind as to leave a short written review, as it helps to get the podcast more notoriety and it would be more visible in future to others, and thus helping more people, which my guests and I are all about. Once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time for another episode of the Mindset Game podcast.